The envelope isn't addressed by name. It uses initials, the way hospitals do when they don't want to get anything wrong. It's already open when she sees it, sitting on the counter between an unpaid electricity bill and a folded discharge form from the maternity ward. Someone signed for it while she was still learning how to sit without wincing. She doesn't touch it at first. The house is quiet in the wrong way. Not peaceful, just hollow. The baby sleeps near the window where the light is softest. Everything else feels paused, like the room is waiting for instructions it isn't going to get. When she finally reads the first page, her name appears in full, followed by her husband's. The words underneath are formal, distant, arranged to look neutral. A claim, a portion, an amount that doesn't belong in the same sentence as her life. $5 million. She sits down on the floor because the chair feels too deliberate. A week earlier, she'd been told she was the sole beneficiary of her aunt's estate. The lawyer said it carefully, like he expected her to interrupt. She didn't. Her aunt had raised her in pieces, taught her things when she thought she was ready, withheld explanations when she thought she wasn't. She believed timing mattered more than fairness. Her husband knew her aunt. He knew where she lived, what she valued, how she spoke about money like it was a tool, not a prize. He also knew when to leave. He chose the middle of labor, said he needed air, took his jacket, didn't come back. The letter explains that his absence doesn't void his standing. That marriage creates entitlements that don't dissolve just because someone walks away at the wrong moment. It doesn't mention childbirth. It doesn't mention the hours she spent alone listening to machines. It doesn't mention the messages she sent that stayed unread. By the time the lawyer calls to confirm she's received everything, she already knows this isn't about reconciliation. The language is too clean, too practiced. This is about access. She looks around the house and tries to inventory what's hers. The bassinet, the couch, the stack of files her aunt kept labeled in pencil. None of it explains how a man can disappear and still demand a share of what he never helped protect. Outside, a car alarm goes off and stops. Inside, the baby stirs and settles again. She folds the letter and places it back on the counter, exactly where it had been. That's the moment everything stops being private. The phone rings 3 more times before she answers. The lawyer's voice is neutral in a way that costs money. He asks if she's had time to review the documents. She says yes, though she's only read the first 2 pages. The rest sit folded on the counter where the light from the window doesn't reach. He asks if she has representation. She doesn't answer immediately. The baby makes a sound that isn't quite crying, and she shifts her weight from one hip to the other, testing how much movement her body allows. Everything still feels rearranged. I'll need a name by tomorrow, he says. They're requesting an expedited hearing. She hangs up without confirming. The bassinet rocks slightly when she walks past it. Her phone vibrates again, a number she doesn't recognize. Then another. She turns it face down on the counter and leaves it there. In the bathroom, she stands in front of the mirror and tries to recognize her reflection. Her body doesn't fit the same way it did 6 weeks ago. The stitches have dissolved, but the soreness hasn't. She moves carefully, like she's carrying something fragile that might break if she turns too quickly. When she returns to the kitchen, there's a knock at the door. She doesn't answer. The knock comes again, harder this time. Through the window, she sees a man in a gray shirt holding a clipboard. He knocks a 3rd time, then slides something under the door before walking back to a car idling at the curb. The paper is thin, almost translucent. Another notice. A date circled in red ink. 14 days. She picks it up and reads it standing in the hallway, the baby monitor crackling softly from the other room. The language is denser now, more specific. It lists assets she didn't know existed, properties, accounts, investments her aunt never mentioned. Each line includes an estimated value. The total climbs. Her hands shake slightly. She sets the paper down and presses her palms flat against the counter until they stop. The house phone rings. She doesn't have a house phone. The sound is coming from a device plugged into the wall near the refrigerator, something left over from the previous tenant. It rings 4 times, then stops, then starts again. She unplugs it. Her own phone lights up. A text from a number saved only as initials. His lawyer, maybe, or someone who works for his lawyer. The message is short. We need to schedule a conversation. Today if possible. She doesn't reply. The baby wakes up crying, the sound cutting through the stillness. She moves toward the nursery, but her legs feel unsteady. like she's walking on a surface that might give way. In the doorway, she stops. The room smells like powder and something sour she hasn't been able to locate. She lifts the baby from the bassinet, adjusting her grip until the weight feels distributed. The crying doesn't stop immediately. It builds, then plateaus, then builds again. She paces in small circles, counting steps, waiting for the rhythm to change. It doesn't. Her phone rings again. This time, she recognizes the number. Her aunt's estate attorney. She answers without speaking. "I've been copied on the filing," he says. His voice is quieter than before. "We need to meet. Tomorrow, if you can manage it." "I can't," she says. "I have. Bring the baby." She closes her eyes. The room tilts slightly, then settles. "What happens if I don't respond?" He pauses. She hears papers rustling, a door closing in the background. "They'll proceed without you. And they'll win." The baby's crying shifts into something sharper, more insistent. She adjusts her hold, but it doesn't help. "Tomorrow," he says again. 10 o'clock. "I'll send the address." The call ends. She stands in the center of the nursery, the baby pressed against her shoulder, and tries to remember the last time she felt like she was making a decision instead of responding to one. The memory doesn't surface. Outside, a car door slams. She moves to the window and looks down at the street. A woman she doesn't recognize is standing next to a sedan, looking up at the building. She's holding a folder. She doesn't move for several seconds, just stands there, staring. Then she starts walking toward the entrance. The woman from the street doesn't knock. She leaves the folder wedged between the door and the frame, then walks back to her car. By the time she reaches the elevator, the engine is already running. The folder contains photographs. The house from different angles. Her aunt's property upstate, a place she visited once, maybe twice. Pages of financial records with sections highlighted in yellow. At the bottom, a handwritten note on legal letterhead, "For your review. We'll need responses to all flagged items." She sets it on the table next to the others and doesn't open it again. The baby needs to be changed, then fed, then held in a specific position that doesn't aggravate the reflux that started 3 days ago. The pediatrician said it was normal. The internet said 12 different things. She does what works, which is walking in circles while the baby faces outward, watching the ceiling fan. Her body aches in layers. The surface pain has faded, but deeper inside, something still pulls wrong when she moves too quickly. She's supposed to rest. The discharge papers said so. They also said to ask for help. There's no one to ask. Her husband's things are mostly gone. He came back once while she was at a follow-up appointment, took his clothes, his laptop, the blender he insisted they needed. He left the furniture, left the dishes, left the half-assembled crib he'd started putting together the week before her due date. The instructions still spread across the floor in the second bedroom. She hasn't touched them. His toothbrush is still in the bathroom, dried out and tilted in the holder. She passes it every morning and doesn't throw it away. Not because she's waiting, because it doesn't matter enough to decide. The coffee maker stops working on the third day. She tries the usual fixes, unplugging it, checking the filter, running water through, but nothing happens. She drinks instant instead, standing at the counter, the powder dissolving unevenly. Her phone buzzes. A reminder about a postpartum checkup she forgot to schedule. Another text from the lawyer's office. A voicemail from someone claiming to be from the court. She deletes the voicemail without listening. The mail arrives in waves. More legal documents. A bill for a credit card she didn't know existed. Her husband's name listed as the primary account holder, hers as secondary. The balance is higher than she expected. The recent charges include restaurants she's never been to, all dated within the last month. She sets it aside and doesn't calculate. In the nursery, she tries to organize the supplies that have accumulated without system. Diapers in one drawer, clothes in another, blankets folded into a basket that doesn't quite fit on the shelf. Everything feels temporary, like she's arranging items in a hotel room. The baby cries again. She picks her up and checks. Diaper clean, not hungry, no fever. Just crying. The sound fills the apartment, bouncing off walls that feel closer than they should. She tries walking, tries singing, though her voice cracks and she stops. Tries sitting in the rocking chair her aunt sent before she died, the wood creaking in rhythm. The crying continues. She thinks about calling someone. A friend, her cousin, the neighbor who signed for the first envelope. But her phone is in the other room, and the baby won't let her set her down, and the effort of explaining feels larger than the potential help. So she doesn't. At night, she lies in bed and stares at the empty side where her husband used to sleep. He took his pillow, left hers. The sheets still smell like the detergent he preferred, the one she never bought herself. She tries to remember the last conversation they had that wasn't about logistics. The last time he looked at her and saw something other than a list of tasks. The memory doesn't come. What comes instead is the image of him checking his phone in the delivery room. The way he'd scrolled while she breathed through contractions, his face lit blue in the dim light. The way he'd said he needed air, casual, like stepping out for coffee. The air outside hadn't brought him back. She gets up and walks to the kitchen, opens the folder the woman left, flips through the photographs again. In one of them, her aunt's house looks smaller than she remembers. In another, there's a car parked in the driveway she doesn't recognize. Her phone lights up on the counter. A text from an unknown number. You can't ignore this forever. She reads it twice. Doesn't respond. Sets the phone face down and returns to bed. The baby wakes her at 4. Then 5:30. Then 6:15. Each time, she goes through the same sequence. Change, feed, hold, wait. Each time, her body protests in slightly different ways. By morning, she's managed 3 hours of sleep in fragments. The estate attorney's address arrives via email. It's across town, in a building she'd have to take 2 buses to reach. The appointment is in 4 hours. She looks at the baby, asleep finally in the bassinet. Looks at the pile of legal documents spreading across the kitchen table. Looks at the empty coffee maker that won't turn on. Her husband's contact information is still in her phone. She scrolls to it, thumb hovering over the call button. She doesn't press it. Instead, she starts getting dressed, moving carefully, each motion calculated to avoid the parts of her body that still haven't forgiven her. The baby wakes up halfway through. She finishes dressing one-handed, the other arm cradling weight that feels heavier each day. At the door, she hesitates, picks up her keys, puts them down, picks them up again. Her phone buzzes. Another message from the unknown number. He's willing to talk. Are you? She locks the door behind her without answering. The building is glass and steel, the kind that reflects clouds in ways that make the sky look closer than it is. She stands outside for a full minute, the baby strapped against her chest in a carrier that's adjusted too tight. Her ribs ache under the pressure, but loosening it feels like more effort than enduring it. Inside, the lobby is cold. The air conditioning hums at a frequency that makes her teeth hurt. A security guard directs her to the elevators without asking her name. The attorney's office is on the 14th floor. The doors open into a waiting area with chairs that look expensive but feel worse than the ones at the hospital. She sits anyway. The baby shifts against her, making small sounds that aren't quite fussing yet. A receptionist appears and says her name like a question. She nods. The woman gestures toward a hallway, then returns to her desk without waiting. The attorney's office has floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking streets that look cleaner from this height. He's younger than she expected, wearing a suit that fits too well to be off a rack. He stands when she enters, but doesn't offer to shake her hand. He's looking at the baby. You can sit anywhere, he says. She chooses the chair farthest from his desk. He opens a folder that's thicker than the ones she's been receiving. Pages spill slightly at the edges, held together by clips that look temporary. He doesn't speak immediately, just sorts through sections, pulling certain pages forward, others back. Your aunt's estate is more complicated than the initial filing indicated, he says finally. His tone is careful, measured. There are assets we're still cataloging. She doesn't respond. He slides a stapled packet across the desk. She doesn't reach for it. 3 properties, he continues. 2 in the city, 1 upstate. The upstate property has tenants. Month-to-month lease, no formal contract. They're asking about renewal terms. I don't know anything about that. You will. He taps the packet. There are also investment accounts. Multiple. Some date back 30 years. Your aunt never consolidated. The baby starts to squirm. She adjusts her position, but the movement makes her wince. He notices, then looks away. The total valuation is higher than we initially assessed, he says. Closer to 7 million. The number doesn't land the way she expects. It just sits there, too large to attach to anything real. Your husband's claim is based on marital property law, he continues. He's arguing that the inheritance falls under community property because you were married when your aunt died. His attorney is citing precedent from 3 different states. We don't live in a community property state. No, but he's arguing you benefited from his financial support during the marriage, which enabled you to maintain a relationship with your aunt. It's creative, not solid, but creative enough to delay. She looks at the packet on the desk, doesn't touch it. What does delay mean? Months, maybe longer. He leans back in his chair. They're requesting access to records, tax returns, joint account statements, correspondence between you and your aunt. Anything that establishes the nature of your relationship and his involvement. He wasn't involved. You'll need to prove that. The baby starts to fuss in earnest now. She stands, swaying slightly, the motion automatic. The attorney watches but doesn't offer anything. There's another issue, he says. The properties need maintenance. The upstate tenants are reporting a roof leak. The city properties have tax liens we need to resolve before you can assume ownership. None of this can wait for the lawsuit to settle. How much? For the liens? Approximately $40,000. The roof, another 12. Possibly more, depending on what the inspector finds. She stops moving. The baby's fussing escalates into crying. I don't have that. The estate does. But accessing it requires court approval, which requires proving you have standing as the sole beneficiary, which is currently contested. He pauses. You see the problem. She sees several problems. None of them feel solvable from where she's standing. He pulls another document from the folder. Your aunt also left instructions. Not a letter, just notes in the margins of her financial records. They're not legally binding, but they indicate intent. What kind of intent? She wanted the properties maintained. She wanted the tenants protected. She was specific about not liquidating certain accounts. He slides the document toward her. She also noted your husband's name. Once. With a question mark. The baby is crying fully now, the sound filling the small office. She tries to rock her, but her arms are tired, and the motion feels performative. I need to feed her, she says. He nods toward a door on the far wall. There's a conference room. Take your time. She walks out without taking any of the papers. The conference room is empty, too large for its purpose. She sits in a chair that spins slightly when she shifts her weight. The baby latches immediately, the crying stopping as abruptly as it started. Through the glass wall, she can see the attorney on the phone, gesturing with one hand. He's not looking in her direction. She closes her eyes and tries to inventory what she knows. 3 properties she's never managed. Tenants she's never met. Accounts she can't access. A lawsuit she didn't anticipate. A roof that's leaking somewhere she's only seen in photographs. Her aunt's voice surfaces in her memory, fragmented. Money doesn't solve problems. It just changes which problems you have. The baby finishes and falls asleep almost immediately. She adjusts her clothes and returns to the office. The attorney is off the phone. He's added more papers to the pile on his desk. There's one more thing, he says before she can sit. Your husband filed a motion to freeze the estate pending the outcome of his claim. The judge is reviewing it now. What does that mean? It means nothing moves until this is resolved. No access, no transfers, no decisions. Everything stops. She looks at the windows, at the city below, at the buildings that look solid from this distance. How long? Depends on the judge. Depends on how aggressive his attorney wants to be. Depends on what evidence surfaces. He pauses. I'd estimate 6 months minimum. 6 months. The baby will be sitting up by then. Maybe crawling. The roof will have leaked further. The tenants will have left or sued or both. The tax liens will have compounded. What do I do? She asks. He picks up the packet and holds it out to her. This time, she takes it. You wait, he says. And you prepare. She leaves the building with the baby asleep and the packet tucked under her arm. Outside, the sky has changed. Clouds heavier now, threatening rain that hasn't arrived yet. Her phone buzzes. A text from the unknown number. Did you meet with your lawyer? We should talk before this gets worse. She stops walking. Reads it again. The phrasing is deliberate, almost friendly. Like an offer instead of a threat. She's still standing there when the first drops start to fall. The meeting happens in a different glass office 3 days later. This one has less natural light, more artificial surfaces. The table is long enough that people could sit at opposite ends and still need to raise their voices. She arrives early. The baby is awake but quiet, watching the ceiling panels with the focused attention newborns give to things adults have learned to ignore. She sits in the middle of the table, not at either end, and waits. His lawyer arrives first. A woman this time, shorter than expected, wearing a suit the color of charcoal. She sets her briefcase down with a sound that fills too much space, then extends her hand. The protagonist doesn't take it. Can't, with the baby. The lawyer retracts her hand without comment. We appreciate you coming, the lawyer says, sitting across from her. This doesn't need to be adversarial. She doesn't respond. Her own attorney arrives next, looking more tired than he did 3 days ago. He sits beside her without speaking, spreading folders across the table in a pattern that might mean something. Then her husband walks in. He's wearing a shirt she doesn't recognize. His hair is shorter. He looks at her for less than a second before looking at the baby, and something in his expression shifts, softens or hardens. She can't tell which. He sits next to his lawyer. Doesn't say her name. Let's begin, his lawyer says. She opens a folder that matches his attorney's in thickness. My client wants to make clear that his intent here is not punitive. This is about equity. The baby makes a sound. She adjusts her hold. Equity, her attorney repeats. The word sits there. During the marriage, my client provided financial and emotional support that enabled your client to maintain relationships that ultimately resulted in significant material gain. The lawyer's voice is smooth, practiced. California case law is clear on this point. Assets acquired during marriage. We're not in California. The principle applies. She doesn't pause. My client supported your client through pregnancy, contributed to household expenses, and facilitated the relationship with the deceased through his presence and participation in family events. The protagonist looks at her husband. He's looking at his hands. He left, she says. The lawyer's expression doesn't change. My client experienced a mental health crisis related to the stress of impending fatherhood. He sought space to process. That doesn't negate his contributions. He didn't come back. He was asked not to. The lawyer slides a paper across the table. This is a text message your client sent 2 days after the birth. Quote, "Don't contact me. Don't come here. I need to figure this out alone." End quote. She stares at the paper. The message is there. Her own words. She remembers sending it at 3 in the morning while the baby screamed and the nurses had stopped checking as frequently. She doesn't remember the context that came before it. Doesn't remember what he'd said to prompt it. That was after. Timing matters, the lawyer interrupts. But so does clarity. My client respected your explicit request for no contact. Her attorney leans forward. Your client left during labor. That's documented in hospital records. He stepped out. He returned. 4 hours later. After the delivery was complete. The lawyer tilts her head slightly. New fathers often struggle with the intensity of childbirth. It's a recognized psychological phenomenon. The protagonist feels something sharp in her chest. Not pain exactly. Something adjacent to it. She looks at her husband again. He's still not looking at her. You left, she says directly to him. Not to his lawyer. To him. He shifts in his chair. Opens his mouth. His lawyer touches his arm lightly, and he closes it. My client doesn't dispute that he left the hospital, the lawyer says. He disputes the characterization of that departure as abandonment. He was overwhelmed. He needed air. He made a mistake in judgment about timing. A mistake, her attorney says. Yes. The lawyer pulls another document forward. Here are records of my client's attempts to reconcile. 3 text messages sent over the following week. 2 phone calls. An email. The protagonist doesn't remember any messages. She checks her phone constantly for different reasons now, but she doesn't remember his name appearing. Her attorney makes a note. We'll need to verify those. They're time-stamped. Timestamps can be manipulated. The lawyer's smile is thin. Are you accusing my client of fabricating evidence? I'm saying we'll verify. The baby starts to fuss. The protagonist stands, swaying automatically. The room is too warm. The lights are too bright. She can feel her husband watching her now, finally, and she doesn't look back. Can we take a break? Her attorney asks. We've barely started. The lawyer says, but she's already standing. 15 minutes. The hallway is quieter. The protagonist walks to the end of it, where there's a window overlooking an alley. The baby's fussing builds into crying. She tries everything. Rocking, shushing, checking the diaper that's still clean. Nothing works. Her attorney appears beside her. Those messages, did you receive them? I don't know. She's too tired to remember. Too tired to parse what she might have deleted or ignored. It doesn't matter, he says. Even if he sent them, it doesn't establish entitlement. But we need to know what we're dealing with. She nods without processing. He's going to testify, the attorney continues. In a deposition or at a hearing. He's going to describe the marriage in a way that justifies his claim. You need to be prepared for that. Prepared how? To hear things that aren't true. Or things that are true but missing context. Or things that are technically accurate but fundamentally misleading. He pauses. The law doesn't care about feelings. It cares about evidence. The baby stops crying as suddenly as she started. The protagonist looks down at her, at the face that's beginning to look familiar, and tries to remember what her own face looked like before all of this. We should go back, her attorney says. They return to the conference room. Her husband is standing now, looking at his phone. He puts it away when she enters. His lawyer is writing something, the pen moving quickly across a legal pad. Everyone sits. Let's discuss the specifics, the lawyer says. My client is requesting 40% of the estate value. Not half, 40%. This reflects his proportional contribution during the marriage. Contribution to what? Her attorney asks. To the household. To the relationship. To creating the conditions under which your client could inherit. The aunt changed her will after they married. Her attorney counters. But the relationship predated the marriage by decades. His presence didn't create the inheritance. It maintained it. The lawyer flips through her notes. Your client's aunt visited twice during the marriage. Both times, my client was present. Both times, he facilitated a welcoming environment. That's documented in photographs. The protagonist remembers those visits. Remembers her aunt sitting at the kitchen table while her husband asked questions about her properties, her accounts, her plans. Remembers thinking he was trying to connect. Remembers her aunt's face, neutral, polite, measuring something she never articulated. Facilitated, her attorney repeats. Yes, he cooked. He engaged in conversation. He made efforts. He asked about her assets. He expressed interest in her life. The lawyer's tone doesn't change. Those are the same thing in functional families. The protagonist's attorney writes something down. She can't see what. My client is also requesting compensation for emotional distress. The lawyer continues. The pregnancy was difficult. Your client experienced complications that required additional support. My client provided that support. He wasn't there for the delivery. He was there for the pregnancy. 9 months of support. That doesn't disappear because of one difficult day. The baby starts fussing again. The protagonist stands without asking permission and walks out of the room. In the hallway, she paces. The baby's crying builds, then plateaus. She can hear voices through the door, not the words, just the rhythm. Her attorney's voice, sharp. The other lawyer's voice, steady. Her husband's voice, finally speaking. Quiet. Too quiet to make out. She stands against the wall and closes her eyes. Tries to remember a single conversation with him about her aunt that wasn't also about money. Can't locate one. Tries to remember him visiting her aunt without prompting. Can't find that either. The door opens. Her attorney steps out. They're willing to settle, he says. $2 million. Immediate payment. Case closed. She stares at him. It's more than they'd win, he continues. But it's less than the cost of fighting. And it ends today. No. He doesn't look surprised. Think about it. Sleep on it. No. He nods slowly. Then we prepare for a long process. They return to the conference room. She sits without looking at her husband. My client declines the settlement offer, her attorney says. The lawyer closes her folder. That's unfortunate. We were hoping to resolve this amicably. Amicably, the protagonist repeats. The word feels foreign in her mouth. Her husband speaks then, his first words directly to her. I just want what's fair. She looks at him. Really looks. His face is familiar and strange at the same time. She tries to find the person she married in the person sitting across from her. Can't bridge the distance. Fair, she says. He doesn't elaborate. The meeting ends without resolution. Papers are gathered. Schedules are compared. Future dates are proposed. Everything is deferred. In the elevator, her attorney says, he's going to push for a deposition. You'll need to answer questions under oath. She doesn't respond. About the marriage. About your aunt. About everything. The elevator doors open. She walks out into the lobby, into the afternoon light that feels too bright after the fluorescent office. Outside, her husband is standing next to a car she doesn't recognize. He's alone. His lawyer is gone. He looks at her, opens his mouth, closes it. She walks past him without stopping. Behind her, he says her name. She keeps walking. The first hearing is scheduled for a Thursday. Then it's moved to the following Tuesday. Then postponed indefinitely due to a scheduling conflict on the judge's end. No one explains what the conflict is or when it might resolve. Her attorney sends updates via email. Short paragraphs, minimal commentary. The tone is professional, which she's learning means this is normal and this is expensive at the same time. The bills arrive in their own rhythm. Retainer fees, document processing, court filing costs. Each invoice breaks down hours in 6-minute increments. A phone call is 0.2 hours. Reviewing an email is 0.1. She starts calculating her life in tenths. The estate remains frozen. The roof upstate continues leaking. The tenants send photos, water stains spreading across a bedroom ceiling, buckets positioned on hardwood floors. They're polite about it, but the politeness has edges. They mention other housing options. They mention lease terms that technically allow them to leave. She forwards the photos to her attorney. He forwards them to the court. The court doesn't respond. The tax liens compound. Interest accrues daily. The amount grows in small increments that feel enormous when added together. She checks the numbers compulsively, refreshing the city's website at odd hours, watching the balance climb. Her own savings are shrinking. The maternity leave she planned for isn't paid. The job she had before is holding her position, technically, but the calls from HR are becoming more frequent. They need to know when she's returning. They need to plan coverage. They're supportive, they say, but there are limits to support. She doesn't know what to tell them. She doesn't know anything. The baby develops a rash that won't respond to the cream the pediatrician prescribed. Then the rash clears and a new problem emerges. She won't sleep unless she's being held. Not just held, but walked. In motion. Constantly. The protagonist paces through nights that feel identical. Living room to kitchen to hallway to bedroom. Small loops that eat hours. Her feet develop blisters from the cheap slippers she wears because she's too tired to tie shoes. She walks through the pain until it becomes background noise. During the day, she tries to manage documents. There are forms to sign, questionnaires to complete, requests for information that require access to records she doesn't have. Her attorney sends templates. She fills them out wrong. He sends revisions. She fills them out wrong again. Just do your best, he says during one of their 0.2-hour phone calls. Her best isn't working. Her husband's lawyer files a motion to compel discovery. The protagonist's attorney files a response. The response requires exhibits, bank statements, receipts, correspondence. She searches through drawers and folders and boxes she hasn't unpacked from moving into this apartment 2 years ago. She finds things she forgot existed. A birthday card from her aunt, and signed. A receipt from a restaurant she doesn't remember visiting. A photo of her husband at her aunt's upstate property, smiling, his arm around the protagonist's shoulders. She doesn't remember who took the photo. Doesn't remember the day it was taken. She submits it anyway because it's requested and she's too tired to evaluate whether it helps or hurts. The deposition date is set. Then moved again. Each reschedule comes with an explanation that sounds reasonable in isolation, but collectively feels strategic. Conflicts with other cases. Attorney illness. Court unavailability. Her attorney assures her this is normal. This is how it works. The system moves slowly by design. She stops asking when things will happen and starts just waiting for them to happen. The baby's pediatrician recommends a specialist. The specialist is booked 3 months out. The appointment costs $200 even with insurance. The protagonist schedules it and adds it to the mental list of things that are draining resources she doesn't technically have access to yet. A friend visits and stays for 20 minutes. She brings food in containers that stack neatly in the refrigerator. She offers to hold the baby so the protagonist can shower. The protagonist accepts. The shower lasts 7 minutes because the baby starts crying and won't stop until she's back in familiar arms. The friend leaves saying she'll come back soon. She doesn't. Mail continues arriving. Some of it is relevant: legal notices, court documents, certified letters requiring signatures. Some of it is noise: credit card offers, grocery store circulars, bills for services she's already canceled. She stops sorting it immediately and lets it accumulate on the counter until the piles become geography. Her husband's lawyer sends a settlement proposal. $3 million now. Case dismissed. Mutual non-disclosure. The number is higher than before, but still feels like theft. Her attorney asks if she wants to counter. She says no. He asks if she's sure. She doesn't answer. The next proposal arrives 2 weeks later. 2.5 million. Final offer. The language is definitive, like a door closing. She reads it standing in the kitchen at 2 in the morning while the baby sleeps in 5-minute intervals. The words don't quite parse. Her brain feels sluggish, misfiring. She reads the same paragraph 3 times and still can't extract meaning. She doesn't respond to the offer. Her attorney responds on her behalf. Polite. Firm. No. Another hearing date appears on the calendar. This one holds. The protagonist marks it in her phone, sets 3 reminders, writes it on the actual paper calendar her aunt gave her years ago. The date sits 2 months away, circled in red ink that bleeds slightly through the page. 2 months feels impossible. 2 months feels like relief. Both things are true simultaneously. The bills keep arriving. The retainer runs low. Her attorney sends a replenishment request. $5,000 to continue. She doesn't have $5,000. She has a frozen estate worth millions and a checking account with $800. She asks about payment plans. He says they can work something out. The something isn't specified. She understands this means she'll owe more later, with interest she can't calculate yet. She agrees anyway. The baby turns 2 months old. The protagonist marks the milestone by doing nothing. There's no celebration, no photo, no post online. The day passes like the others, feeding, changing, walking, not sleeping. Someone from the city's tax office calls. They're following up on the liens. They need payment or a payment plan. They need something to show good faith. She explains the situation. The person on the phone is sympathetic and unhelpful. Rules are rules. The clock is ticking. They'll have to proceed with collections if nothing is resolved within 90 days. 90 days lands past the hearing date. Barely. She doesn't know if that matters. Her attorney files another motion. She doesn't read it closely. Something about expediting. Something about undue hardship. The language is dense and recursive, referring to statutes and precedents that might as well be written in a different language. The motion is denied. The hearing stays where it is. She receives a letter from the upstate tenants. They're giving notice. 30 days. They found another place, somewhere with a landlord who responds to maintenance requests. The letter is apologetic but firm. They're including photos of the mold that started growing in the corner of the bedroom where the leak has been ignored. She forwards it to her attorney. He says they'll address it after the estate unfreezes. She doesn't ask what happens to the property in the meantime. Her phone buzzes constantly now. Unknown numbers. Blocked callers. She stops answering. Lets everything go to voicemail. Listens to the voicemails once a week in a batch, deleting most without finishing them. One message is from her husband. Not his lawyer. Him. His voice is quiet, uncertain. I know you're not picking up. I wanted to say this didn't have to be like this. We could have just talked. You didn't have to make it this hard. She saves the message. Doesn't know why. Doesn't delete it. The baby develops a new pattern. Fussy all evening. Come only between midnight and 3. The protagonist adjusts her life around this window. Does laundry at 1 a.m. Pays bills at 2. Responds to emails at 2:30. Sleeps when she can, which is never enough. Her body isn't recovering the way the discharge papers said it would. Everything still hurts. Different pains now, but constant. She mentions it at a follow-up appointment. The doctor says stress delays healing. The doctor recommends rest. The protagonist nods and doesn't laugh. Time becomes strange. Days blur. Weeks compress. The hearing date approaches without feeling closer. She marks off each day on the calendar, but the number remaining doesn't seem to shrink proportionally. Her attorney sends a prep document. Questions she should expect. Answers she should prepare. He suggests they meet to practice. She agrees. The meeting is scheduled for the week before the hearing. Then it's rescheduled. The attorney is dealing with another case that's gone to trial. He'll call instead. They'll do it over the phone. The call lasts 0.5 hours. He asks questions. She answers. He says her answers are too emotional. She tries again. He says they're too sparse. She tries to find the middle. Can't. Just tell the truth, he says finally. But tell it clearly. She doesn't know what clarity means anymore. The night before the hearing, she doesn't sleep. The baby does, miraculously, for a 4-hour stretch. The protagonist lies in bed staring at the ceiling, running through answers she's memorized, trying to anticipate questions she can't predict. At dawn, she gets up and starts getting ready. The process takes twice as long as it should. The baby needs to be fed, then changed, then fed again. Her own clothes don't fit right. Everything pulls or sags or reveals shapes she's still getting used to. She's halfway to the door when her phone rings. Her attorney. The hearing has been postponed. The judge called in sick. They're looking at new dates. Possibly 3 weeks out. Possibly longer. She hangs up without speaking. The baby is crying. The apartment is too warm. The light coming through the windows feels accusatory. She sits on the floor and doesn't move for 20 minutes. When she finally stands, her legs feel unsteady. She picks up the baby and starts walking. Living room to kitchen to hallway to bedroom. The familiar loop. The motion that solves nothing but passes time. Outside, the city moves at its own pace. Inside, everything stays suspended. The rescheduled hearing arrives on a Tuesday morning in weather that can't decide what it's doing. The protagonist arrives 20 minutes early and sits in the hallway outside the courtroom. The baby is asleep against her chest, the weight familiar now, almost comfortable. Her attorney arrives with coffee stains on his sleeve. He doesn't acknowledge them, just sits next to her and opens his briefcase, pulling out folders that look more worn than they did weeks ago. They submitted additional exhibits yesterday, he says. Late, but the judge allowed it. She doesn't ask what the exhibits are. Phone records mostly, showing attempted contact. They're trying to establish a pattern of him reaching out and you refusing. Did he reach out? The records show calls. Whether you receive them or not is different. The doors open. A bailiff gestures them inside. The courtroom is smaller than she expected. Wood paneling that absorbs sound. Fluorescent lights that hum at the edge of hearing. Her husband is already seated at the opposite table, his lawyer arranging papers in stacks that look choreographed. He glances at her. She doesn't look back. The judge enters without ceremony. A woman, older, wearing reading glasses on a chain. She sits and immediately starts reviewing documents, not acknowledging anyone in the room. This is a motion hearing, she says without looking up. Not a trial. I'm here to determine whether the plaintiff's claim has sufficient merit to proceed. Counselors, keep it brief. Her husband's lawyer stands. Your Honor, we've submitted extensive documentation showing my client's material and emotional contributions during the marriage, his good faith attempts at reconciliation, and the direct relationship between his support and the defendant's inheritance. I've seen your submissions, the judge says. Anything new? We have phone records showing 17 attempted contacts over a 6-week period, all unanswered. The judge looks at the protagonist's attorney. Response. He stands. Your Honor, my client was recovering from childbirth during that period. She had documented medical complications requiring follow-up care. The plaintiff left during labor and did not return until after delivery. Context matters. It does, the judge agrees. But so do facts. Did she receive the calls? The protagonist's attorney hesitates. We're still verifying the record's accuracy. That's not an answer. Some calls may have been received. Others went to a number she wasn't monitoring regularly. The judge makes a note. Continue. The hearing proceeds in fragments. Evidence is presented without narrative. Bank statements showing joint account activity. Receipts for dinners, groceries, utilities. Photos from family gatherings. Everything reduced to exhibits marked with letters and numbers. The protagonist's attorney presents his own documents. Hospital records showing her husband's absence during critical hours. Text messages he sent before delivery. Casual, unremarkable, giving no indication of an impending departure. A timeline that contradicts the mental health crisis narrative. Then he introduces something new. Your Honor, we've obtained correspondence between the plaintiff and the deceased prior to the marriage. He slides copies to the judge and opposing counsel. 3 letters sent over a 6-month period. The plaintiff was inquiring about the deceased's real estate holdings and investment strategy. The judge reads. Her expression doesn't change. Her husband's lawyer scans the documents quickly. These letters show appropriate familial interest. My client was engaged to the defendant. He was naturally curious about her family. They were dating, the protagonist's attorney corrects. Not engaged. And the letters specifically ask about asset valuation and estate planning. Direct quotes. Have you considered what happens to the properties if you can't manage them? And I'd be happy to help you organize your financial documents. Helpful, the opposing lawyer says. Not predatory. Helpful 2 years before the marriage. Then the deceased changed her will 6 months after the wedding. The judge looks up. When exactly did she change it? The protagonist's attorney checks his notes. 7 months after the marriage. But she consulted with her attorney about changes 3 months after. What prompted the change? The attorney's notes indicate she wanted to simplify her beneficiaries. She removed 2 cousins and a nephew, making the defendant the sole heir. The judge looks at the opposing counsel. Did your client know about this? The lawyer hesitates. My client knew the deceased was considering updates to her estate plan. That's not unusual for someone her age. Did he know he wasn't included? He didn't expect to be included. He wasn't blood family, but he expected to benefit through his wife. That's how marital property works, Your Honor. The judge doesn't respond, just makes another note. The protagonist's attorney continues. We've also obtained bank records showing the plaintiff opened 3 separate accounts in the 6 months before the birth, all in his name only. Total balance at the time of his departure, $32,000. The courtroom is quiet. Source of funds, the judge asks. Joint marital accounts. Transferred in increments over time. No unusual amounts that would trigger reporting, but cumulatively significant. Her husband's lawyer stance. My client was managing household finances. Those were savings accounts for legitimate purposes, future childcare costs, medical expenses, emergency reserves. In his name only, the judge says. My client handled the banking. It was more efficient. Your client also left during labor. He experienced a psychological crisis. With $32,000 in accounts his wife didn't know about. The lawyer's pause is brief but noticeable. She had access to the account information if she'd chosen to review it. Did she have the passwords? Another pause. Banking can be managed multiple ways, Your Honor. The judge looks at the protagonist. Did you know about these accounts? She stands. Her legs feel unsteady. No. Did you have access? I don't know. He managed everything. The judge nods. Sit down. She sits. More documents are presented. Emails between her husband and her aunt. Most are innocuous. Thank you notes after visits, holiday greetings. But 3 stand out. In one, he asks if she needs help managing her properties. In another, he suggests she consider a trust structure. In the third, sent 2 months before her death, he offers to connect her with a financial advisor he knows. Her aunt's responses are polite, non-committal. The last one is a single sentence. I have adequate support, but thank you. The protagonist reads the email on the screen projected at the front of the courtroom. She remembers her aunt mentioning a phone call, saying someone had been asking questions. She didn't say who. The protagonist assumed it was one of the cousins. Your Honor, her attorney says. These communications establish a pattern. The plaintiff positioned himself as helpful while systematically extracting information about the estate. When the deceased declined his assistance, he continued attempting access through his wife. Speculation, the opposing lawyer says. Documented speculation. The judge removes her glasses. Here's what I have. A husband who left during childbirth with undisclosed savings. A husband who showed unusual interest in his wife's elderly relative's finances. A husband who filed suit within a week of learning about an inheritance. And a husband whose own timeline for reconciliation attempts doesn't align with hospital records showing his wife's medical distress. She looks at the opposing counsel. I'm not saying your client is lying. I'm saying his credibility has problems. Your Honor. I'm also not dismissing the case. Not yet. She puts her glasses back on. But I'm denying the motion to freeze the estate. The defendant needs access to manage the properties. The tax issues can't wait for litigation to resolve. The protagonist's attorney sits back, doesn't smile, but something in his posture relaxes. We'll schedule a full evidentiary hearing, the judge continues. Both parties will be deposed. I want complete financial disclosure. Every account, every transaction, every communication with the deceased. If there are more surprises, I want them now, not during trial. She closes the folder in front of her. We're adjourned. Everyone stands. The judge leaves. The room empties slowly. In the hallway, her attorney is already on his phone, texting someone. When he finishes, he turns to her. This is good. She doesn't feel good. You'll have access to the estate accounts within a week. We can address the immediate property issues. Pay the liens. Fix the roof. She nods. But the depositions are going to be extensive. They'll ask about everything. The marriage, the pregnancy, your relationship with your aunt, your financial awareness. You need to be prepared. I thought I was prepared. You were. But now we know what they have. Now we prepare for what they don't. She doesn't understand the distinction. Her husband approaches from across the hall. His lawyer is beside him, speaking quietly. They stop several feet away. Can we talk? He asks. Not to the attorneys. To her. Her attorney steps forward slightly. A barrier. All communication goes through counsel. I'm talking to my wife. Your estranged wife who you're suing for $5 million. Her husband's jaw tightens. He looks at the protagonist. You saw those emails. You saw me trying to help. That's all I was doing. Trying to help her, trying to help us. She adjusts the baby, who's starting to wake. You opened accounts I didn't know about. Savings. For us. In your name. That doesn't mean anything. It was easier to manage. Easier for who? He doesn't answer. His lawyer touches his arm. We should go. He doesn't move immediately. Just stands there, looking at her like he's waiting for something. Recognition maybe. Forgiveness. Understanding. She doesn't offer any of it. He leaves. His lawyer follows. The hallway empties. Her attorney exhales. The depositions are in 3 weeks. We'll meet before then. Multiple times. I need you to go through everything. Every conversation, every interaction, every moment you can remember. Anything that contradicts his version. What if I don't remember? Then we work with what you do. She walks toward the exit. The baby is fully awake now, making sounds that will become crying soon. Outside, the weather has decided on rain. She doesn't have an umbrella. Her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. You're making a mistake. Those emails don't show what you think they show. She reads it twice. Doesn't respond. Puts the phone in her pocket and steps out into the rain. The deposition happens in a conference room that smells like old carpet and new paint. A court reporter sits at the end of the table with equipment that makes clicking sounds at irregular intervals. The protagonist's attorney is to her left. Her husband's lawyer across. A camera in the corner records everything. She raises her right hand and swears to tell the truth. The questions start broad. Name, address, date of birth. When she met her husband. How long they dated before marriage. The answers are mechanical, factual. She keeps her voice level. Then the questions narrow. Did your aunt attend your wedding? Yes. How did she seem that day? Seem? Her demeanor. Her health. Her engagement with the event. The protagonist tries to remember. The wedding was small, fast. City Hall. Her aunt wore navy blue. She took photos but didn't post them anywhere. She seemed fine. Did she speak with your husband? Briefly. What did they discuss? I don't remember specifically. The lawyer makes a note. You don't remember any conversation between your aunt and your husband on your wedding day. They talked. People talk at weddings. I didn't record it. Did she seem comfortable with him? She was polite. That's not what I asked. The protagonist's attorney interrupts. Vague and speculative. I'm asking about observable behavior. You're asking her to interpret internal states. The judge will review this later. Will have to decide. The deposition continues. After the wedding, how often did your aunt visit? Twice. Maybe 3 times. In how long? 2 years. That's not frequent. It's a question, not a statement, her attorney says. The opposing lawyer rephrases. Would you characterize your relationship with your aunt as close? Close enough. What does that mean? We spoke regularly. She helped me when I needed it. Financially, sometimes. How often? The protagonist thinks. Rent once when she was between jobs. A security deposit. Help with car repairs. 4 or 5 times. Over what period? 10 years maybe. So your aunt provided financial assistance approximately every other year. When I needed it. Did you ask for help, or did she offer? Both. Which was more common? The protagonist pauses. The question feels like a trap, but she can't identify the mechanism. She usually offered before I asked. So she was attentive to your financial situation. She paid attention. Did your husband know about this assistance? Some of it. Which instances did he know about? The rent. The car. But not others? I don't remember what I told him and when. More notes. The lawyer flips through papers. Your aunt changed her will 7 months after your wedding. Were you aware of this? Not at the time. When did you become aware? When her attorney called after she died. You weren't expecting to inherit? I wasn't thinking about it. Your aunt was in her 70s. You never discussed what would happen to her properties. No, never. She didn't discuss those things. But your husband discussed them with her. Apparently. You weren't present for those conversations? No. Did he tell you about them afterward? No. Did you find that strange? Her attorney interrupts again. Speculation about past mental states. I'm asking what she observed at the time. I'll allow the question, the attorney says to the protagonist. But you can answer, I don't remember, if that's accurate. She thinks. Tries to place herself back in that apartment, that marriage, that version of herself that feels foreign now. I didn't think about it then. But you think about it now. Obviously. What's obvious about it? That it looks different with more information. The lawyer leans forward slightly. What looks different? His interest. His questions. His timing. Timing of what? Leaving when he did. You're suggesting your husband knew about the will change? I'm saying the timing is suspicious. Suspicious based on what evidence? Based on him leaving and then suing. Correlation isn't causation. I'm not a lawyer. No, you're not. The lawyer pauses. Let's talk about the accounts. The ones your husband opened. Did you ever review bank statements? Sometimes. How often? I don't know. Monthly maybe. So you had access to financial records. He usually checked them first. But you could have checked them yourself. Technically. Did you ever access the online banking? She tries to remember passwords, login screens, the interface she barely used. A few times. How many is a few? I don't know. 5. 10. Over 2 years of marriage. I was busy. Too busy to monitor your own finances? Her attorney starts to object, but she answers first. He said he was handling it. And you trusted him. I was married. He didn't hold his newborn daughter? The nurses were doing tests. There wasn't really an opportunity. For an hour? She doesn't answer. Did you ask him to hold her? No. Why not? I don't know. It didn't feel right. What didn't feel right about it? He'd left. He came back like nothing happened. I didn't know how to act. So you punished him by not letting him hold his child. Her attorney objects forcefully. Mischaracterization and argumentative. Withdrawn. The lawyer stands. We'll take a break. 15 minutes. The protagonist doesn't move when everyone else stands. Her attorney touches her shoulder lightly. You're doing fine. She doesn't feel fine. She feels like every answer is wrong even when it's true. In the bathroom, she splashes water on her face. Looks at herself in the mirror. Her eyes are tired. Everything is tired. When she returns, there's a new stack of papers on the table. The lawyer is scrolling through a tablet. They resume. Let's discuss the inheritance notification. When did you first learn about the estate? The attorney called. Maybe 5 days after my aunt died. What did he tell you? That I was named as beneficiary. That there would be paperwork. That it would take time to process. Did he mention the value? An estimate. What was the estimate? Between 5 and 7 million. And what was your reaction? She tries to remember her reaction. Tries to separate what she felt from what she thinks she should have felt. Surprised. Just surprised. I didn't expect it to be that much. Did you tell your husband? He was gone by then. But before he left. When the attorney first called. The attorney called after he left. The lawyer checks her notes. The death certificate shows your aunt died on a Tuesday. The attorney says he called you on Friday. Your husband left on Saturday, during labor. That's a 24-hour window. I didn't know about the inheritance before he left. Are you certain? Yes. The attorney didn't leave a message? Send an email? He called once. I missed it. He called again after delivery. Phone records show 3 calls from the attorney's office to your number between Tuesday and Saturday. You're saying you missed all 3. She tries to remember. Those days are blurred. Contractions starting and stopping. Hospital bags packed and unpacked. Her husband quiet, distant, checking his phone. I missed them or I don't remember them. It was a difficult week. Difficult because you were in labor or difficult because you were hiding information about a multi-million-dollar inheritance? Her attorney stands. That's inappropriate, and you know it. It's a legitimate question about timeline and disclosure. It's an accusation. The lawyer sits back. Let me rephrase. Did you, at any point before your husband left, have reason to believe you would inherit a significant estate? No. Did your aunt ever indicate you were her primary beneficiary? No. Did she discuss her estate planning with you at all? No. So you had absolutely no knowledge that you stood to inherit millions of dollars. That's what I've been saying. And yet your husband left at precisely the moment this information was about to become public. I don't know what he knew or when he knew it. That makes 2 of us. The deposition continues for another hour. More questions about timing, about conversations she doesn't remember, about decisions she can't explain. By the end, every answer feels insufficient. When it's finally over, She signs papers she doesn't read carefully. Her attorney guides her out of the building. They're trying to establish that you knew about the inheritance earlier than you're saying, that you and your husband fought about it, that his leaving was a reaction to conflict, not abandonment. That's not what happened. I know, but they're building an alternative narrative. We'll need to counter it. She's too tired to ask how. At home, the baby is crying before she gets through the door. The babysitter looks exhausted. She apologizes, takes the baby, pays the babysitter more than they agreed on. Her phone shows 7 missed calls, 3 from unknown numbers, 1 from her husband, 3 from her attorney. She doesn't listen to any of the voicemails. Instead, she sits on the floor and lets the baby cry against her chest. Lets the sound fill the apartment. Lets everything stay unresolved. The ruling arrives via email at 11:30 on a Wednesday night. The protagonist is awake because the baby won't sleep. She's walking the usual circuit when her phone buzzes. She almost doesn't check it. The subject line reads, Ruling, Case Number 2025, CV 8847. She stops walking. The baby protests with a sound that isn't quite crying yet. She opens the email. The attachment is 12 pages. Legal formatting, dense paragraphs, citations in parentheses. She scrolls to the end first, looking for the conclusion. The court finds insufficient evidence to support plaintiff's claim of marital entitlement to the contested inheritance. Motion to dismiss is granted. Plaintiff is ordered to pay defendant's legal costs. Case closed. She reads it 3 times. The words don't change. The baby is crying fully now. She resumes walking, phone still in her hand. She forwards the email to her attorney without adding a message. He responds within minutes. Got it. This is what we wanted. Call me in the morning. She doesn't call in the morning. She barely sleeps. When dawn comes, she's already awake, staring at the ceiling, trying to locate a feeling that matches the outcome. Relief doesn't arrive. Neither does satisfaction. What arrives is a kind of flatness. Like the end of a sound she didn't realize was constant until it stopped. Her attorney calls at 9. She answers while feeding the baby. Congratulations, he says. His voice is professional, pleased in a measured way. Okay. The estate will unfreeze within a week. We can start addressing the property issues immediately. The liens can be paid. You'll have full access. Okay. He pauses. You don't sound happy. I don't know what I sound like. You won. That's not nothing. She adjusts the baby's position. What happens now? Now? You manage the inheritance. Deal with the properties. Make decisions about liquidation or retention. Start living with the resources your aunt intended you to have. And him. He can appeal. Probably won't. The ruling is pretty definitive. But he has 60 days if he wants to try. 60 more days of suspension. 60 more days of waiting to see if this is actually over. The cost award will be processed separately, her attorney continues. It won't cover everything. It never does. But it'll offset a significant portion. You'll receive an itemized statement. She doesn't ask how much. Doesn't want to calculate what winning cost. After the call, she sits with the baby and looks around the apartment. Nothing has changed physically. The walls are the same. The furniture is the same. The stacks of legal documents still cover the kitchen table. But something has shifted in a way she can't name. Her phone buzzes. A text from an unknown number. I heard about the ruling. This isn't over. She stares at it. Doesn't respond. Blocks the number. Another text arrives from a different number minutes later. You really think this is fair? You really think you deserve all of it? She blocks that one too. The messages continue throughout the day. Different numbers. Same general message. She stops reading them after the 5th one. Just blocks and deletes. By afternoon, her attorney calls again. Are you receiving harassing messages? Yes. From your husband? I don't know. Unknown numbers. Document them. Screenshot everything. If it continues, we can file for a restraining order. I just want it to stop. I know. Document it anyway. She hangs up and starts screenshotting. Creates a folder. Labels it. Another task that doesn't solve anything but needs doing. The estate attorney calls the next day. His tone is different now. Less cautious, more administrative. We can start the transfer process. I'll need signatures on several documents. Can you come to the office? She makes an appointment. Takes the baby. The same building, the same elevator, the same waiting room. This time, the papers are different. Transfer documents. Tax forms. Property deeds. Each one requires her signature in multiple places. Her hand cramps halfway through. The upstate property needs immediate attention, the attorney says. The roof damage is extensive. I've contacted 3 contractors for estimates. The lowest is $18,000. She signs authorization for the repair. The city properties need inspection. Both have violations we weren't aware of until recently. Nothing catastrophic, but they need addressing. She signs more authorizations. The investment accounts are accessible now, but I'd recommend meeting with a financial advisor before making any significant decisions. Your aunt's portfolio is diverse. Some of it is relatively high risk. She nods, adds "find financial advisor" to the mental list that keeps expanding. The attorney slides a final document across the desk. This is your statement of assets. Everything your aunt left. Current valuations as of this week. She looks at the numbers. They're larger than the estimates from months ago. Appreciation, the attorney explains. Market changes. Compounding. $7.2 million. The number doesn't feel real. Doesn't attach to anything she understands as hers. You should feel good about this, the attorney says. Your aunt wanted you to have security. You have it now. Security. The word feels theoretical. She leaves with folders full of documents she'll need to review. Outside, the weather is mild. People are walking dogs, carrying groceries, living regular lives. She tries to remember what regular felt like. At home, she spreads the documents across the table. Property deeds with addresses she's only visited once. Account statements showing balances that seem fictional. Tax documents requiring decisions she doesn't know how to make. The baby needs to be changed. Federal held. Life continues in parallel to the paperwork. Her phone rings. A number she recognizes. Her husband. She doesn't answer. He calls again. Then texts. I need to talk to you. Not about the case. About something else. She deletes it. He calls a third time. This time she answers. What? His voice is uncertain. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For how this went. She doesn't respond. I know you don't believe me. But I never wanted it to be like this. I thought we could work it out between us. I thought you'd be reasonable. Reasonable? You got everything. All of it. I get nothing. That doesn't seem fair. You left during labor. I made a mistake. A bad one. But that doesn't mean I don't deserve anything. I was your husband. I supported you. That should count for something. The baby starts crying in the other room. She walks toward the nursery, phone still pressed to her ear. It counted, she says. The judge counted it. She decided it wasn't enough. The judge doesn't know what our marriage was like. Neither do I, apparently. Silence on the other end. Then, what's that supposed to mean? The accounts. The emails. The questions you asked my aunt. I didn't know any of that. I was trying to help. You were trying to position yourself. That's not what I was doing. It's what it looked like. More silence. She can hear him breathing. I loved you, he says finally. I care about you. About the baby. That should mean something. She picks up the baby, adjusting her against her shoulder. It means you say you loved me, and you left anyway. It means you say you care, and you sued me anyway. I don't know what to do with that. I don't know what to do either. Then I guess we're both stuck. She hangs up. The baby's crying doesn't stop immediately. She walks the circuit. Living room, kitchen, hallway, bedroom. The motion is automatic now. Her body knows the rhythm without thinking. Her phone doesn't ring again. Days pass. The harassment stops. The block numbers don't return. Her attorney says the 60-day appeal window is counting down. 20 days left. Then 10. Then 5. On day 61, nothing happens. It's over, her attorney says during their final call. He didn't file. You're clear. She waits for relief. It doesn't come. What comes instead is a kind of settling. Like dust after something collapses. The contractor starts work on the upstate roof. Sends progress photos. The damage was worse than expected, not just the roof, but the underlying structure. The estimate doubles. She approves it because there's no alternative. The city properties get inspected. Violations are cataloged. Most are minor but expensive to fix. She hires contractors, signs more authorizations, watches money leave accounts she just gained access to. Her aunt's financial advisor calls. They schedule a meeting. The protagonist sits across from a woman in a gray suit who talks about asset allocation, risk tolerance, tax strategies. The language is foreign, but she takes notes anyway. Your aunt was conservative with most investments, the advisor says. But she kept about 15% in higher risk positions. Tech stocks mostly. They've performed well. The protagonist nods like she understands. The question is what you want to do. You can maintain her strategy or adjust to your own comfort level. I don't know what my comfort level is. The advisor smiles. That's normal. Take time to think about it. There's no rush. But everything feels like rush. The baby growing. The property's aging. Her own life suspended in some space between who she was and who she's supposed to become. She keeps the accounts as they are. Decides to decide later. At night, when the baby finally sleeps, she looks through photos of her aunt. There aren't many. Her aunt didn't like cameras. But there are a few, standing in front of the upstate property, sitting at a table during a holiday meal, holding the protagonist's hand at her college graduation. In the graduation photo, her aunt is smiling slightly. Not widely. Just enough to suggest approval without committing fully to sentiment. The protagonist studies her aunt's face. Tries to find instruction there. Tries to understand what her aunt intended by leaving everything to her. Security, the attorney said. But security from what? For what? The questions don't have answers. She places the photo on a shelf next to the others. Her own graduation, the baby's birth announcement, a postcard from a trip she took before any of this started. The arrangement looks like someone's life. Maybe it is. Her husband's contact information is still in her phone. She scrolls past it sometimes by accident. Doesn't delete it. Doesn't call it either. Just lets it exist in the space between action and erasure. The baby turns 4 months old. Starts rolling over. Starts sleeping in longer stretches. Progress happens whether or not the protagonist feels ready for it. She receives a final bill from her attorney. The cost award from her husband covered 60%. The remaining balance is substantial but manageable now. She pays it and closes that file. The upstate tenants find a new place. Leave without drama. She hires a property manager to find new tenants, to handle maintenance, to deal with the things she doesn't want to deal with. The city properties get the same treatment. Someone else's problem now. Someone else's responsibility. The money sits in accounts. Grows slightly. Compounds. Exists. She doesn't feel rich. Doesn't feel poor. Feels like someone managing resources she didn't earn for purposes she hasn't identified yet. At night, she still walks the circuit with the baby. Still counts steps. Still waits for something to feel resolved. It doesn't. The case is closed. The inheritance is hers. The properties are managed. Everything that needed deciding has been decided. But the feeling of suspension remains. Like she's still waiting for the real ending. The one that makes sense. The one that provides clarity about what any of this meant. It doesn't come. Outside, the city keeps moving. Inside, the baby grows. The protagonist learns to live in the gap between outcome and understanding. Some mornings she wakes up and forgets about the lawsuit entirely. Goes minutes, sometimes hours, before remembering. Those moments feel like progress. Other days, she wakes up and it's the first thing she thinks about. The leaving, the lawsuit, the emails, the way love or something called love turned into litigation. Those days feel like starting over. She learns to accept both. Learns that resolution isn't the same as closure. That winning doesn't mean healing. That having resources doesn't answer the questions about why they were contested in the first place. Her aunt's photo stays on the shelf. The fan ticks unevenly. The baby continues becoming whoever she'll become. And the protagonist learns to sleep anyway. The upstate property sells 4 months later. The new buyer is a couple from the city looking for weekend space. They make an offer that's below asking, but above what the property manager says is realistic given the roof repairs and the rural market. She accepts it, signs papers in the same office where she signed papers to authorize repairs. The transaction feels circular, spending money to make the property sellable, selling it for less than it's theoretically worth, ending up with more than she started with, but less than the numbers suggested. The property manager asks if she wants to attend the closing. She says no. Doesn't need to see the people who'll live in the space she barely visited. Doesn't need to perform sentiment about a house that was never hers in any real sense. The money transfers. Her accounts grow. Nothing changes except the numbers. The city properties stay. Tenants rotate through. Maintenance issues arise. A broken water heater, faulty wiring, complaints about noise. The property manager handles most of it. Sometimes she gets copied on emails. She approves expenses and tries not to calculate how much time she spends managing assets she never asked for. Her aunt's investment portfolio requires quarterly reviews. The financial advisor sends summaries, performance metrics, recommendations for rebalancing. The protagonist scans them without absorbing much, says yes to most suggestions. The advisor seems satisfied with this arrangement. She returns to work when the baby is 6 months old. Part-time first, then full. The office feels smaller than she remembers. Her desk is where she left it, but someone else's coffee mug sits in her usual spot. She moves it without commenting. People ask about the baby, show her photos of their own children or nieces or nephews. The conversations are polite, brief, forgettable. No one asks about the lawsuit. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they know and decided not to mention it. She's grateful for the omission either way. Her manager assigns her projects that feel less urgent than the ones she had before. Training materials to update. Process documentation to revise. Work that needs doing but doesn't require the intensity she used to bring. She completes everything on time. Doesn't volunteer for additional assignments. Clocks out when her hours are finished. At night, the baby sleeps better. Sometimes through the night entirely. The protagonist wakes anyway, checking the monitor, listening for sounds that don't come. Her body hasn't adjusted to the absence of crisis. She tries reading. Starts 3 books and finishes none. Tries watching television. Falls asleep during shows she used to like. Tries going to bed earlier. Lies awake staring at the ceiling instead. The apartment feels too small and too large simultaneously. She looks at listings for bigger places. 2 bedrooms. Better light. Neighborhoods with parks. The prices are manageable now. She could afford any of them. She doesn't schedule viewings. Can't articulate why. Just keeps scrolling through listings without acting. Her cousin calls. They haven't spoken since before the lawsuit. The cousin heard about the inheritance, about the case, about the outcome. She congratulates the protagonist in a tone that sounds rehearsed. "Are you doing okay?" the cousin asks. "I'm managing." "That's not what I asked." The protagonist doesn't have a better answer. They talk for 12 minutes. Surface topics. The weather. The cousin's job. A mutual acquaintance getting married. When the call ends, they promise to meet for coffee. Neither of them suggests a date. The baby starts sitting up, then crawling, then pulling herself up on furniture. Development happens in bursts. The protagonist watches and documents with photos she doesn't post anywhere. Creates albums on her phone labeled by month. 7 months. 8 months. 9 months. Time passes whether or not she's ready. She receives a letter from her husband's attorney. Not a legal filing. Just a letter. It says her husband wanted to reach out, but was advised against direct contact. It says he's accepted the outcome. It says he hopes she and the baby are well. The letter doesn't apologize. Doesn't explain. Just states facts in language that feels drafted by someone else. She reads it once and files it with the other documents. Doesn't respond. Later, she pulls it out and reads it again. Tries to find something between the lines. Some indication of regret or understanding or recognition of what happened. Finds only the same neutral statements. She puts it back in the file. Her aunt's birthday passes. The protagonist marks it by doing nothing special. Doesn't visit the grave. Doesn't light a candle. Just acknowledges the date privately and moves on. The financial advisor suggests creating a trust. For the baby's future education, healthcare, security. The structure would provide tax advantages. Would ensure the inheritance serves its purpose across generations. The protagonist agrees without fully understanding the mechanisms. Signs papers. Watches her attorney review them. Trusts that someone knows what they're doing even if she doesn't. She starts therapy. Not because something specific prompts it. Just because the absence of crisis creates space to consider it. The therapist asks what brings her in. She tries to explain. The lawsuit. The inheritance. The marriage that ended before she understood it was ending. The feeling of winning something and losing something and not knowing how to account for both. The therapist nods. Asks follow-up questions. The protagonist answers some. Dodges others. After the 3rd session, the therapist asks about her aunt. What was she like? The protagonist considers. Careful. Deliberate. She didn't explain things. She just did them and expected you to figure out why later. How do you feel about that? I don't know. Sometimes I wish she'd been clearer. Sometimes I think clarity would have made it worse. Made what worse? Knowing what she thought. What she saw? Why she changed her will. You think she saw something. I know she saw something. She stopped returning his calls. She made me the sole beneficiary. She knew. Knew what? The protagonist pauses. That he was asking the wrong questions. that he was positioning, that he'd leave when it suited him. Did she tell you this? No. So you're inferring. Yes, but I'm right. The therapist doesn't confirm or deny, just writes something in her notes. The sessions continue. Weekly, then bi-weekly. The protagonist talks about the marriage, the lawsuit, the inheritance. Circles the same topics in slightly different configurations. Progress is incremental or non-existent depending on the day. She starts running. Early mornings before the baby wakes. Short distances first, then longer. Her body protests initially, still recovering, still adjusting. But slowly it cooperates. The rhythm becomes familiar. She doesn't run toward anything, just away from the apartment for 20 minutes at a time. The baby's first birthday approaches. The protagonist plans a small gathering. Immediate family only. Her cousin, a friend from work, the neighbor who signed for the first envelope months ago. She bakes a cake that collapses slightly in the middle. Decorates it anyway. Hangs streamers that look cheerful in a way that feels forced. People arrive. Bring gifts. Take photos. The baby smashes her hands into the cake, and everyone laughs. The protagonist smiles for the photos. Cuts slices of the collapsed cake. Serves them on paper plates. It feels like playing a part. Like performing an idea of celebration that exists separately from what she actually feels. When everyone leaves, she cleans up. Throws away paper plates and crumpled wrapping paper. Wipes frosting off the high chair. Returns the apartment to its usual state. The baby falls asleep easily, exhausted from attention. The protagonist sits on the couch and looks at the photos on her phone. The baby covered in cake. Her cousin laughing. The neighbor holding a balloon. Everyone looks happy in the photos, including her. She studies her own face. Tries to determine if the smile was real or performed. Can't decide. She deletes none of them. Adds them to the album labeled Year 1. Her husband's name appears in her phone contacts when she's scrolling for something else. She hovers over it. Could delete it now. Could call it. Could text. Does none of these things. Just keep scrolling. At work, she's offered a promotion. More responsibility. More money. Flexible hours to accommodate childcare. She accepts. The money doesn't matter the way it used to, but the structure does. The sense of building something separate from the inheritance. Her new projects are more complex. Require more attention. She leans into the work. Stays late when the baby is with a sitter. Completes assignments ahead of schedule. Her manager compliments her dedication. She doesn't mention that dedication is easier than examining what she's dedicated to avoiding. The inheritance continues existing. Accounts grow. Properties appreciate. Numbers compound. She checks the balances occasionally. Feels nothing specific when they increase. The financial advisor calls quarterly. Reviews performance. Makes recommendations. The protagonist approves most. Defers some. The advisor seems unbothered by her inconsistent engagement. You're young, the advisor says during one call. You have time to figure out what you want to do with this. The protagonist doesn't mention that time hasn't clarified anything yet. She visits her aunt's grave finally, 10 months after the funeral. Brings flowers, but no plan for what to say. Stands in front of the headstone. Reads her aunt's name, the dates, the simple inscription. She made her own way. The protagonist tries to feel something definitive. Gratitude maybe. Or anger at being left with resources and no instructions. Or understanding of what her aunt intended. Feels mostly tired. She places the flowers. Doesn't stay long. Drives home and doesn't mention the visit to anyone. That night, the baby wakes crying at 2 a.m. The protagonist goes to the nursery. Picks her up. Rocks her in the chair her aunt sent. The baby settles, but doesn't sleep. Just lies against her mother's chest, eyes open, watching shadows from the streetlight move across the ceiling. They sit like that for an hour. Neither sleeping, neither crying. Just existing together in the space between one day and the next. The protagonist tries to remember what her aunt said the last time they spoke. Some comment about patience. About waiting to understand things until you're ready. She wasn't ready then. Isn't sure she's ready now. But the baby needs to be fed. And changed. And held. Life continues requiring things whether or not understanding arrives. She stands. Walks to the kitchen. Prepares a bottle. Feeds the baby in the dim light. Outside, the city is quiet. Inside, the fan ticks unevenly. The inheritance sits in accounts. The lawsuit is filed in archives. Her husband exists somewhere doing something. And she learns to live in the questions that don't resolve. In the space between what happened and what it meant. in the gap between outcome and peace. Some days that feels like failing. Other days it feels like the only honest way forward. She's learning not to decide which. The baby takes her first steps 3 weeks before her first birthday. Not toward the protagonist, just toward the couch, grabbing the cushion for balance, standing briefly before sitting down hard. The protagonist is in the kitchen when it happens. Sees it peripherally, doesn't make a sound, doesn't applaud or film it, just watches and returns to washing dishes. The baby tries again later. Same result. Then again, each time gaining slightly more confidence. By the end of the week, she's walking consistently. Still unsteady, still falling often, but moving forward. The protagonist adjusts, clears obstacles from the floor, adds padding to sharp corners, reorganizes the apartment around new capabilities. Life reconfigures around development without asking permission. She sells the second city property. The first one stays. The tenant is reliable. Rent arrives on time. Maintenance requests are reasonable. The property manager says keeping one is smart from a tax perspective. The protagonist doesn't fully understand the tax implications, but trusts the assessment. The money from the sale transfers to accounts that already have too much. She considers what to do with it. Invests some. Saves some. Donates a small portion to organizations her aunt supported, literacy programs, housing assistance, legal aid. The donations feel right and insufficient simultaneously. Work continues. The promotion brings different problems. Personnel issues. Budget constraints. Projects that span months. She manages them competently without enthusiasm. Her manager asks if she's considering long-term goals. Leadership track. Management positions. She says she'll think about it. Doesn't think about it. The therapy sessions become routine. She talks about the same subjects from different angles. The therapist asks variations of the same questions. Progress happens or doesn't depending on how it's measured. Do you think you've forgiven him? The therapist asks during one session. I don't think about it that way. How do you think about it? I don't. Mostly. But sometimes. Sometimes. She pauses. I think about how he asked those questions. How he opened those accounts. How he knew what to look for when I didn't. And that makes you feel? Nothing specific. Just aware that I missed things. Is that about him or about you? The protagonist doesn't answer. The sessions continue without breakthrough. She keeps attending because stopping would require a decision she's not ready to make. Her cousin suggests lunch. They meet at a place halfway between their neighborhoods. Orders salads neither of them finishes. You look good, the cousin says. Thanks. I mean it. You look like you're managing. I am. How's the baby? Walking now. Into everything. They talk about childproofing. Sleep schedules. The logistics of single parenting. Surface topics that don't require depth. The cousin doesn't ask about the lawsuit. Doesn't mention the inheritance. The protagonist is grateful for the omissions. When lunch ends, they hug briefly. Promise to do it again soon. Both know they probably won't. The protagonist returns to work. Sits through a meeting about Q3 projections. Takes notes she won't reference. Nods at appropriate moments. Her phone buzzes during the meeting. A message from the property manager. The remaining tenant is moving out. Gave 60 days notice. No issues. Just relocating for work. She acknowledges the message. Adds find new tenant to the list of things requiring attention. After work, she picks up the baby from daycare. The provider says she had a good day. Ate well. Napped. Played with blocks. The protagonist thanks her. Pays for the week. Carries the baby to the car. At home, she goes through the evening routine. Dinner. Bath. Books. Bed. The sequence is automatic now. Her body knows the rhythm without conscious thought. The baby falls asleep quickly. The protagonist stands in the doorway watching her breathe. Tries to feel something profound about time passing or children growing. Feels mostly tired. She returns to the living room. Sits on the couch. Opens her laptop to review tenant applications the property manager sent. 3 candidates. All with good references. Stable employment. No red flags. She selects the first one. Sends approval to the property manager. Closes the laptop. Her phone shows a notification. A year ago today, the first legal notice arrived. The memory feature surfaces a photo of the envelope on the counter. She dismisses the notification without opening it. Some anniversaries don't need marking. She makes tea. Drinks it standing at the kitchen window. Outside, neighbors are walking dogs. A couple argues in the building across the street. Someone's television flickers blue through curtains. Regular life happening everywhere. She rinses the mug, checks the baby monitor. Everything quiet. She sits at the kitchen table and opens the folder she keeps with her aunt's papers. Not the legal documents. Those are filed elsewhere. Just the personal things. Letters. Notes. The photo from graduation. She pulls out a card her aunt sent for her 30th birthday. Generic front, flowers, metallic text. Inside, her aunt's handwriting. You'll figure it out when you need to. No signature. No elaboration. The protagonist has read it dozens of times. Still doesn't know what it refers to. She places the card back in the folder. Closes it. Returns it to the shelf. In the bedroom, she lies down fully clothed. Doesn't intend to sleep. Just needs to lie flat for a moment. Her phone buzzes. A text from her friend from work. How are you holding up? She stares at the message. Tries to formulate an honest answer. Can't locate one that's both true and communicable. She types, fine. Busy. You? The friend responds with details about her own life. The protagonist reads them and forgets them immediately. She sets the phone face down. Thinks about her husband briefly. Wonders where he is. What he's doing. If he thinks about the baby. If he regrets anything or has convinced himself the narrative he built was true. Decides wondering serves no purpose. Stops wondering. The baby cries at midnight. The protagonist goes to the nursery. Changes her. Offers a bottle. The baby refuses. Cries harder. She picks her up and walks. Living room. Kitchen. Hallway. Bedroom. The circuit that solved nothing months ago and solves nothing now but passes time. The crying eventually stops. The baby settles into sleep against her shoulder. The protagonist keeps walking anyway. Too awake now to sleep herself. She thinks about the properties. The accounts. The numbers that keep growing. The responsibility she never sought that arrived anyway. Thinks about her aunt deciding all of this would be hers. Making that choice without explanation or preparation. Thinks about her husband seeing those same resources and calculating his access. Thinks about herself, standing in the middle of it all, trying to understand what she's supposed to do with any of it. No answers surface. They haven't for months. Probably won't. She places the baby back in the crib, covers her lightly, adjusts the monitor, returns to her room, lies down again, stares at the ceiling. Sleep comes eventually. Fragmented. Interrupted. But it comes. Morning arrives whether she's ready or not. She gets up, makes coffee, checks email. The property manager sent a lease for the new tenant. She reviews it, signs electronically, sends it back. One task complete. Hundreds more waiting. The baby wakes up happy. The protagonist feeds her, dresses her, packs the daycare bag. At drop-off, another parent asks if she's doing anything fun this weekend. Not really. You should. You deserve it. She smiles noncommittally. Doesn't mention that deserve feels like the wrong framework for most things now. Work is meetings, emails, decisions about budgets and timelines. She makes them efficiently. Doesn't second guess. At lunch, she eats at her desk. Scrolls through news she won't remember. Returns to work. Her manager stops by. Mentions the leadership opportunity again. Says HR needs an answer soon. I'll let you know by Friday, she says. Friday is 3 days away. She has no idea what she'll decide. After work, she picks up the baby. Goes home. Repeats the evening routine. Dinner. Bath. Books. Bed. The baby falls asleep holding a stuffed animal her aunt sent. A giraffe with mismatched legs. The protagonist hasn't washed it in months because the baby won't let it go long enough. She stands in the doorway, watches the baby sleep, tries again to feel something definitive about motherhood or survival or inheritance or time. Feels the same flatness as always. Not depression, not contentment, just the neutral state of continuing. She walks to the kitchen, opens the cabinet where she keeps her aunt's labeled jars. The system makes no sense to her, but she maintains it anyway. Receipts in one. Foreign coins in another. Buttons in a third. She picks up the jar of buttons. Examines them. Different sizes. Different materials. No apparent organizing principle. She sets it back. Closes the cabinet. In the living room, she sits on the couch. Opens her laptop. Looks at the tenant applications again even though she already selected one. Wonders if she made the right choice. Realizes it doesn't matter much. Someone will live there. Pay rent. Require occasional maintenance. The property will exist regardless of who occupies it. She closes the laptop. Her phone is silent. No messages. No emergencies. No crises requiring immediate response. The apartment is quiet except for the monitor's static and the fan's uneven tick. Outside, the city continues. Inside, she continues. The baby continues. The accounts continue compounding. The properties continue requiring attention. Everything continues without clarity or resolution or understanding. She doesn't feel peace about this. Doesn't feel despair either. Just feels it. She stands. Turns off lights. Checks the locks. Looks at the monitor one more time. The baby is still sleeping. She walks to her bedroom. Lies down. Doesn't change into pajamas. Thinks about tomorrow. The decisions waiting. The routine that will repeat. The baby who will wake and need things. The work that will continue. The money that will sit in accounts. The properties that will require management. Thinks about her aunt. Her husband. The lawsuit. The year that passed. Thinks about all of it and none of it simultaneously. Eventually thinks about nothing. Sleep comes. Morning will come after. And then another morning after that. The inheritance isn't solved. The marriage isn't understood. Her aunt's intentions remain opaque. The questions stay unanswered. But the baby will wake up. And the protagonist will get up. And life will require things. And she'll do them. Not because she's healed or resolved or clear. Because they need doing. And she's the one here to do them.